Okay, welcome to session 27, part C. Okay, let's get more on chapter 16, and I want to do only three questions from the back of the book. And these are question 1F, question 4A, and question 6. Okay, so if you want to hit pause, try to answer those on your own, I encourage you to do that. Okay, great, assuming you're back. Question 1F. Okay. Advocates of zero economic growth are principally concerned about the deleterious effects of economic growth on the environment. Does economic growth necessarily lower the quality of the environment? Okay, so the authors of your textbook explain why maybe not. And regardless of whether it does or not, the correlation goes the other way. Okay, the countries that have had the highest economic growth are the ones with the cleanest environment. Okay, now again, correlation does not imply causality. Okay, I hope you'll take a statistics class. There could be something we call an endogeneity problem, where you can get these perverse effects or the causation that goes the opposite way of the correlation. Maybe something like that's happening. I kind of doubt it. Actually, I think that really it is causal. That what happens is when countries get richer, they can afford more things like luxury goods, like a clean environment. You talk to people, or I have, when third world countries will say, look, you Americans talk about a clean environment. Here more important is eliminating poverty. Key thing, let's eliminate poverty first, then we'll worry about things like cleaning our air, things like that. Here, poverty is so bad, we want to do that first. So if that's true, and if everyone has that attitude, you'd expect that the countries who become richer, once they become rich, then they can afford the luxury of making their environment cleaner. Okay. Number 4. Or textbook has several times emphasized the importance of the rule of law. The antithesis of the rule of law is arbitrary governance, or governance according to the will of whoever is in charge. Does democracy promote the rule of law? The answer is not necessarily. There's something Madison called the tyranny of the majority. The majority sometimes will say, and we know the law says this, but let's not follow it. We don't like that. That happens frequently. And so sometimes democracy, especially sometimes called populism, it is not the same as the rule of law. And this is one reason why lots of people say it's important to have an independent judiciary if you want the rule of law. By independent judiciary, that means that the president, the mayor, the governor cannot fire the judges. Okay, you want the judges to think, here's my best judgment, what the law says. I know maybe at the time the people don't like this and they would fire me if I actually followed what the words on the paper said, that law said. If they had to get elected or their job depended on the ruler, the judge may not follow his or her best judgment. And so for that reason, that people say, someone say it's good to have an independent judiciary, judges who can't be fired either by the rulers or by popular election. Now, lots of states violate that. So lots of states, judges have to be elected and reelected if they want to stay. In California, you can have a recall for a judge if the judge is not making popular decisions. It's a supermajority rule. I think it's 60%, but the people have a vote. You might say that's bad. But in the U.S., the federal judges, though, you cannot be fired. So the president nominates, Senate ratifies, but once they're in office for life, unless they're impeached. The only way they can be ousted is through an impeachment where it takes a 2/3 vote in the Senate. That's very, very hard. So judges, at least in the federal system in the U.S., are independent. By the way, an excellent book It's by a George Mason professor. His name's Garrett Jones. His book is called 10% Less Democracy, where he argues that, yeah, maybe things like an independent judiciary, an independent Federal Reserve, a Senate that's not elected every 2 years but every six, maybe those things are good. And he says those things are less democratic. Okay, they're not the same as just giving the people what they want. Sometimes it's what the people want, but there's a delay. Um, and he says maybe, and he argues why a lot of times those are good. And he says not only that, I'm for more of it. And he says I want to have 10% less democracy. And so he argues that actually the country of Singapore, which you could argue, and our textbook authors say this is a shining example of a country that has grown a lot since World War II and is becoming very, very rich. The movie Crazy Rich Asians that takes place in Singapore. That movie would not have been made in 1960. Singapore was fairly poor in 1960. This is like a shining example of a country that has done things right. One thing that Singapore does is it actually has, according to Garrett Jones, it's a little bit less democratic than a lot of the other Western countries. And he is arguing maybe the U.S. and other countries should try to emulate Singapore. Okay. Number 6. Okay. Should foreign aid that's extended to poor countries, either by wealthy nations or by international agencies, be extended without strings, or should the donors exercise some control over the use of foreign aid that they extend? Okay. Regardless of what your opinion is, often there are strings. And that is exactly, you may have heard of the International Monetary Fund. So this was come up with some Western countries. Some economists, Keynes was one of them that helped create the International Monetary Fund. And what it does is it has a pot of money, I think originally donated by the richer countries. Now they've made investments in other countries. Often they've made money, so they have a bigger pile of money that they can donate or loan to other countries. Usually it's a loan. And the IMF will put strings on it. They will say, we will give you this money if you will put more market-oriented reforms, or you will enforce property rights more, or you will clamp down on your monetary system. You'll quit printing money. If you do this, we will give you this extra this money of what you could call foreign aid, a loan from the IMF. Now, some have criticized that's like paternalism. Who are these gringos? If it's white Americans giving it to the Latino South Americans. You say, who are you, white Americans, to tell us what to do? Well, whether that's good or bad, it's what happens. So that's what the International Monetary Fund does. Okay, good or bad. That's what happens. Okay, that's all the questions. That's it for session 27. So this is the last one. So, but stay tuned. I say it's the last one. Good chance I may do another video according to questions I may get. So finals coming up. Start studying now. Send me questions if you have any question about some topic of the chapter, and I may do an additional video to explain your question to the class. Okay, see you then, or if I don't, good luck on the final.